I only can always get all right. And see if I get back anybody back from the but oh hey, they're on. Hello, David and Kathleen.
Hello, we're gonna adjust the camera.
Yeah. I was
Where
gonna
is
say David looks really far away. It looks like he's in a picture. Sorry, David, I couldn't resist that. Well,
Oh,
thank you guys for stepping up tonight.
all right.
What?
Okay, that's okay.
Did you get my
Oh, yes, thank you.
you got the email?
Yeah, with the list. Hi, Char.
You guys are blessed. So I'm gonna introduce you. I've got a little thing I'm gonna say about you guys. I just something simple.
Okay.
Yeah, just all I'm going to say is MC, David, and Kathleen have been coming to Electric Mermaid in person and via Zoom for a long time. They both live in Gibson's. I don't know what else to say.
Yes.
And David, or between the two of you, do you mind timing?
Timing. Yes, I've got yeah, I brought down my stopwatch.
Okay, perfect. If you guys can MC and time, I'll be very happy.
Do we have
I'll do
a
the rest. I'll do everything on the via computer stuff.
do
So
we
I'll put
have do we have somebody in a 10-minute slot?
yes, we do. Dan Biggs.
Okay, Dan Biggs, who's fourth,
Four. Yes,
he's
he's
in
four.
10 minutes.
Yeah, so Kathleen, you're first. Haha.
Yeah.
All right, lovely. So between the two of you guys can go back and forth if you want to MC, whoever wants to announce, whoever. And then I'm going to add someone else in here right now. So while we're on. Roberta.
Okay, now you want to sit next
So
to
then
me?
Roberta is going to be number 9.
Roberta?
Yeah, Roberta. Or Robbie, also known as Robbie Van.
Oh, Robbie Van.
Yes,
Okay.
5 minutes.
Robbie Van, and he's live, right?
She's yeah, in person. Lovely person in person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, must be good.
So you guys get a gold medal for tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much, David and Kathleen, for stepping up.
Don't speak too fast. We haven't at the end you might not give us even silver or bronze.
No, gold medal. You guys get gold medal for stepping up tonight. Hello, Karen.
You and I were first. That's wonderful.
Well, it's probably better. Now, see, you're going to have to move over when it's.
Yes,
See,
it's my turn.
no, the whole time because we're both doing that. So you're
Don't
going to
forget to time. Don't forget to time, Kathleen.
You should move this way a little
What
bit.
am I not to forget? Time.
Awesome. You're awesome, Kathleen. Thank you. Thank you. Next time you come over, I'm going to make sure you guys get the biggest glass of wine or whatever you drink. I'll get the biggest glass for you guys.
I suggest
Yes.
that I introduce Karen because I
Yeah,
on a page of notes
As
and
much
kind
as
of
you like,
rehearsed
please.
it.
Yes.
You guys got it simple. Just time and just announce everybody when they're reading. I'll do the rest. Oh,
Let me just check my
everything in
air.
the chat.
Well,
Bought a house?
see, what you do have paper notes because We have to do like Derek does and make a little comment each
Did I hear
time.
that right?
Yes.
Say
Okay.
something reasonable,
Yeah.
and intelligent,
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'll do.
you know, like,
Okay, give me the rest, give me the names.
okay. So it's, okay, me, then there's Robert Gunn,
Which is,
2, that's the second, he's in person.
Right.
Then there's the feature, and
Karen Poirier.
yeah, Poirier.
Yeah.
And then there's Jennifer Wenn,
Yeah.
Dan Biggs, you,
Yeah.
Vicki Drybrough,
Yeah.
September Ember, and Robbie Van.
Robbie what?
Van, remember
Van.
Robbie?
Yeah.
So we just have to, you know,
Good.
be like
1, 2,
Derek.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
But I'll tell you what, I'll
9.
mute it.
You're an amazing lady. You'll be missed. Sarah, you'll be very missed. No, I'm reading, I'm not. Welcome. Hello, welcome September. Every animal. Your hair's different. My dog comes running over anytime to bring up. Oh, sit at the feet. If you're playing the piano, you write the space with them. You know what's gonna happen the next time we're doing that? She's gonna start howling and we're helping us, and she'll sing. She'll sing her own way. Even if they don't moving somehow looks like it's about to show. There's so much space. Yeah, that's and even that compares to yeah. So we very yeah, I'm not writing so I was one of the zeros confused. I read
So there are both. Oh, we won't need it. Because that's the thing. But the only spoil that we see that.
The word is only.
So when I see what I'm see on mouse. They have it scares the shit out of them.
What's it enough on the threats?
It's almost to the point now where people are going to have to be laid on the page when you still home. And the minimum wage.
That is so true.
We're such a long way from being reality.
Yeah. Welcome, Jennifer.
Evening, Karl.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's good to see all my Zoom people. I think I've got them all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Timber, Vic, David, and Kathleen, and Jennifer. Yep. You're all my Zoom people.
Good. Just rolling in. This is a double header night. I had another event on. With time zone changes, one can do these things.
Yes. As long as you remember to get to the right thing at the right time. That makes it harder. I mean, especially if you're doing it via Zoom, and then as long as the other one was in your time zone and not a different time zone, then it makes it harder.
Yeah, no, it was in my time zone.
Oh, that makes it much easier.
The whole secret's in my purse calendar.
There you go. It's good.
Karl, do you have Derek's opening about the unceded land?
Oh, no, I don't. Do you?
No.
I don't know. You just say wherever you're from, and you guys, because you're coming from that area. I don't even know how Derek says it. I don't really listen to him.
David's not here tonight?
Huh?
David is not here? Or Derek is not here?
No, he's got a sore throat, so he's staying home. That's why we have Kathleen and David as our Emcees tonight. They get a gold medal.
Yeah, Derek has no voice.
Oh dear, that's not good.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's better by next month.
So David's going to pinch it.
Well, yeah, between David and Kathleen, they're going to do it. They're going to empty and time, and
I don't even know.
maybe they got a hook. Maybe they have a hook that they can bring out and go and pull us out of overtime.
Fuck on the computer for 6 o'clock.
Here, okay.
The top right of the computer.
6 p.m. All right.
Okay. MC, David, and Kathleen have been coming to Electric Mermaid in person and via Zoom for a long time. They both live in Gibson's, BC.
Okay. Well, I think we have an exciting evening tonight, and I wish Derek were here, but he's quite ill. But well, I mean, quite ill. He lost his voice, but otherwise, I think he's fine. I just like to say that here, as everywhere in Canada, we are on unceded territory, unceded lands. And just to make that one clear, and then I think we're ready to go. And the first person tonight is actually me. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to time myself.
It's all good readers.
So, as all good readers do, I wanted to say that I was, last week I started another Blossom Bloom and Little Bloom mystery. And it began with Nargis, who is a friend of the detective agency. And she had been in an MRI, and the noise of the MRI became a Morse code message to her that said that he's going to kill her. And therefore, she thought, who are the only two people I know that fit that? And she figured out it was her neighbors, Ralph and Esther. So she asked the detective agency to investigate it. So she arranged for them to meet. It was late the next day when Ralph and Esther opened the door of their modest two-bedroom bungalow to their neighbor Nargis and her friends, Heather Blossom, Harry Bloom, and Little Bloom. All eyes and ears were immediately drawn to the handsome magnetic preacher moving about on the large screen that filled the living room wall. While he was exhorting them all to gather up the courage to face the truth of their lives and to act on it, Nargis introduced her friends and apologized for interrupting the TV program. Esther reassured them that she could catch it up later on replay and left the living room to make tea for everyone. Ralph invited the guests to take a seat, which Heather had no problem finding, since with its sofa and various chairs and end tables, the room was more packed than a furniture store showroom. Unfortunately, Harry tripped over a chair and nearly toppled an end table before reaching a seat next to Ralph. Lil luckily did not follow Harry's lead and managed to find a seat without mishap. Heather had recently drawn Harry's attention to an instructive video on one of her favorite interpersonal skills websites. The video claimed to teach the art of making small talk, and Harry was eager to prove what he had learned. So, he asked Ralph, did you catch the sports recaps of the day? Not yet. All Esther does all day and night is watch this goddamn church channel, Ralph said as he grabbed the remote control and switched the channel over to sports. Heather rushed back into the living room. I am too busy running this house to sit and watch as much as I'd like, but I keep my channel on all the time because it provides an encouraging, inspiring background. In contrast to Ralph's sports programs and beat 'em up, shoot 'em up, and blow 'em up shows, Heather explained as she picked up the remote to change it back. My channel is filled with people's stories of how their faith has changed their lives, people who have experienced real miracles. Ralph is out all day, in and out of the houses of the neighborhood. He works as a handyman. There's nothing he can't fix, as long as it's not in this house. When he is home, he does nothing but mope and grouch, a regular walking misery. So I'm happy to have my channel. The people on it are good company for me. My parents limit my screen time. I don't always like it, but I understand why they do it, Lil said. In my day, children were seen but not heard, and they certainly didn't speak until they were spoken to, Esther admonished Lil. I don't mean to offend you, but the world has changed, Lil retorted. Turning to her adult visitors, Heather replied, people as young as Lil are always telling older people like me that the world has changed, as though that's something new to us. Do they think we've spent the last several decades in a coma? When my wife Harriet was still alive, there were always neighborhood children in this house and their parents. We had lots of visitors, real people to meet and get to know. But Harriet's dead now and everything's changed. Heather expressed her condolences. Ralph explained that Harriet's death had been a while ago. Before then, Esther's husband, Ward, had died, and Esther had moved away from the town where she had lived with Ward to live with her sister Harriet and her brother-in-law. The three of them had bought this house together, but then Harriet had died, and there were just the two of them left. And you're going to maybe come next month and you can find out what's going to happen to the two of them that are left, because it's now after 5 minutes. All right. So, David, next is
Rob Gunn.
who is in person in the Electric Mermaid.
Thank you for that rousing ovation. In that very awkward and sometimes depressing week between Christmas and New Year, when I was feeling particularly low, I wrote this one: The Gods of War in 2024. Those ancient great gods of war had a very good 2024. They played carefully each chess piece, but were forced into no compromised peace. Their unleashed dogs played freely in the ruins, while no child of Gaza were given medicines. In Kiev, another bleak winter was in store. The stories of drones became somewhat of a bore. What possible humor can be found in war, especially as it is conducted in 2024? Can we comprehend trenches, mud and snow 110 years after our first go? How can our more recent many-faced almighty, thanks George R.R., calmly and contritely just watch as his Holy Land tribes play their games with their ever fanatic crop, a soup of acronym names? Will the blood-soaked sand and stone of their harshed and sun-drenched brutal home always demand the beliefs of eye for eye retribution and never allow for any human rational solution? On all desert-based religion, I declare a pox. Put them all back into history's box. Give us a rest from their tribal, mismanaged, misguided beliefs. We need no book of Revelation prescribed reliefs. A little fact not many of us know is that Article 2 of good old 2% NATO calls for peaceful, friendly international relations and seeks stability and well-being between nations. Then let us be strong, hard-nosed, and transactional. Our real threats are serious and profoundly existential. If we fail, the so-called human project's future will be one of a long, messy, painful personal torture. Of course, since that was written, there have been some more positive signs over the last couple of weeks. Although one estimate I saw this morning suggested that it would take about 100 dump trucks working 24/7, 15 years to clear the rubble in Gaza. In January, I was down in Florida. Well, I wished I was. And I wrote this little number as kind of a joke: the Mar-a-Lago Bay Blues. I was a long way from my home in Vancouver and was paddling not any new Uber, but paddling the seas down Florida way, pushing myself up the quiet waters of the bay, trying to get to Mar-a-Lago. Pay my respects to the Emperor, don't you know? Just then a drone came over low. Luckily, I was going real slow because the shots they fired went over the bow, Had to get out of here somehow, turned smartly into the shore. Then what a strange sight I saw. Colourful green bloated creatures oozing up the beach. As I watched their bodies sliding by, slightly out of reach, clear scales changing to gold credit cards and green $1,000 bills. A real Kafkaesque metamorphosis. This can't be happening. Hold your horses. What in hell was going on? Was I late for church? This is scary, but I didn't want to be left in the lurch. Quite a collection plate, I supposed. They all walked by on their knees in silent supplication. This situation required real careful navigation. After all, folks who change this quickly could turn on you. Through the trees, a golf course came into view. Someone yelled 4, and I hit the floor, rolled into a bunker, looked over the lip. A tough-looking young woman jogged over to me while talking quietly into her sleeve. She gave the impression she wanted me to leave. She barked at me, "You're number 14,000 for today." I'd heard that line before, but I can't remember where anymore. I said, "But I'm from Canada, the true north, strong and free." Then she asked, "What's the difference between you and me?" I wondered just where she'd been. Had she ever seen any porno flicks? Should I take her back to the bunker and show her some licks? Being a gentleman, I said, "If you were from Canada, you would know." She was not amused, and her tight voice said, "Well, that's as maybe, but you're in the wrong line, don't you know?" She grabbed me by the arm and frog marched me beyond the pool, made me stand behind a hard-faced woman sitting on a stool, wearing a shirt that said, "I'd rather be Alberta bound," and gagged. She was saying to herself, "Please, please, sir, don't tax my oil." Beside her was this black-suited little guy, all glasses and sharp teeth. He seemed to have a real beef, timidly practicing to himself, Your Excellency, we're both in the same con game. Please, sir, please don't mention my name. If I lose, I'll have you to blame." I could easily see this was no place for me. So he scooted on down a leafy lane, bumped into this man secured by a chain, his blue shirt read, Mar-a-Lago staff. He looked maybe Latino, but crying with real hurt. Holding the chain was a guard in a brown Homeland shirt. Shouted at me, "Where's your papers?" "I'm an O visa," I proudly declared. What extraordinary abilities do you have?" he wanted to know. I told him I can run real fast, and I flew on my toes. Round a corner, right into a room full of young men, marking up law books with Sharpies and grown men's toys. One looked up with no suggestion of fear and yelled, "Can't you see we're drafting executive orders here?" "What one do you want? We're in a hurry. We don't like to wait." I wondered, should I ask them to declare Canada the 51st state? But I told them the boss wants to pardon John Wesley Hardin. Oklahoma knows him well. Boss figures it's good for some votes. Excuse me while I go rustle up some PR quotes. This was getting dangerous and serious. So I fled back to that safe, quiet cove and found my canoe parked down in the grove, tore the parking ticket off the mast, tried to bury all this stuff deep in the past. But in a day of funny and disturbing things, the funniest thing I saw that day were 3 old ships coming my way. I asked the captain what his name was and how come he didn't give a fuck. He said his name was Columbus, and I just said, good luck. I didn't have the heart to ask about his visa. Goodbye, Mar-a-Lago. Hello, Miami Beach.
Oh, great. I want to remember those scaly creatures at Mar-a-Lago. Lago. You were going to say something. No.
Oh, I love the rhyming, really. Vancouver and Uber, and then Alberta bound and gagged. I thought brilliant, bound and gagged.
Okay, David, we got the camera. Oh, okay, so now we have our featured reader this evening, which is Karen Poirier, and she is a well-known artist. She has actually written poetry and novels, so for over 12 years now. She started, which is quite interesting, with a poetry class at North Island College, taught by none other than Derek Hannaberry. She also did the writing studio program at SFU and studied in graduate studies in creative writing at SFU. She's written, first novel was Across a Prairie Sky, which, interesting for us tonight, was actually based on her mother's experiences homesteading in Manitoba. She's also written a children's book called Ronald and Donald. She has appeared in that exciting book called Alberni, a collection of short stories written by many readers on the Electric Mermaid. She has actually quite an interesting long career in painting, writing, and creating a beautiful garden. I actually went to her website to look at pictures, not only of her artwork, but of the garden itself. Now, what I hope she's going to read also to us tonight is from her latest work, which some of us have been following on Electric Mermaid, which is the turbulent years of World War II as seen through her father's eyes. So I introduce Karen as our featured reader this evening.
Okay, can you hear me? Is that good? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you in Zoom land.
Good, that's good. Last month I read a little bit from this book about the potatoes that they were stealing from the garden and hiding, and what they were going to do with them. They were going to make some moonshine. So I will continue with that for a bit. In the dying daylight, the prisoners stood around in the kitchen, their metal cups cool in their hands and smiles on their faces. They were a ragged-looking crew, all anxious to go home to their families. Bob, Lloyd learned, carried scars on his back, a memento of the burns he'd sustained during the raid. His daughter, Jacqueline, had recovered from polio, and Bob wondered if she would even know him when he finally made it home. Dan looked forward to his letters from Mary. He hoped she would be as happy to see him as he would be to see her on that wonderful day he would arrive back home. Ray, also married, had never seen the young son born after he was deployed. He carried pictures of his family with him and shared updates of his son's milestones to any good listeners. Frank, usually quiet, was a little more talkative. Lloyd thought the positive energy and moonshine had loosened his tongue a little. Cheers, bottoms up. The men held their cups up and drowned their drinks. Dan's Adam's apple rose and appeared to be stuck halfway before he was able to completely swallow. Ray's voice came out in a tiny squeak when he tried to speak. Just how strong is this stuff? Choked Ray. Here, have some more hot water in it, Bob replied. Lloyd started to take a drink, then slowly lowered his arm. His gaze became unfocused, and a slight smile appeared on his face. He heard the violin music again. Even though Lloyd didn't recognize the musical piece, it spoke to him. It spoke clearly and sadly. As the night progressed and the bright white moonlight outlined the buildings outside, jars of moonshine was passed around to the prisoners in the hut. Their quiet salutes to each other morphed like a steaming pot of water. bubbling slowly at first before rising into a frothy, overflowing cascade of foaming energy. Another round of drinks, and their eyes glowed, and easy laughter escaped their mouths. Everything was funny. The guards, their meals, and especially the German officers. The laughter grew louder, their gestures more erratic. The hut took on a foggy, rose-colored glow that seemed to vibrate in time to hands clapping to music. "Hey, turn that music up so we can hear it. Let's get this party going. Pass Molly around here. I need a partner to dance with." Molly was a string-haired mop on the end of a long broom handle. She was swung around, dipped, and bounced up and down. Pete, his nose in the air and his tail wagging, joined in the excitement, first following one man, then another. Pete made the rounds, and when a cup was put down on the floor, he took advantage of the opportunity and slurped whatever was left in it. In minutes, he became the center of their merriment, dancing around on his hind legs and barking to the music. The stark gray interior of the hut became a kaleidoscope of colorful cheeriness, happy chatter, and raucous laughter. Chapter 39. I'll be seeing you, click, you, click, you, click. The soft whirring sound of a record circling on the gramophone, and the repetitious words of the song chanted with pulsing snores, subtle laughter, and quiet conversations. After many rounds of cheers for the boys, Canada, and good old England, the hut and the glassy-eyed prisoners were in disarray, with blankets twisted and left lying on the floor, prisoners propped up and passed out, and dirty cups strewn about. In one corner, a Polish prisoner lay buried under boots, blankets, pillows, and anything else the men could throw at him to muffle his loud snores. He didn't stir, and Lloyd wondered if he could even breathe under the pile. The Pole had fallen asleep some time after midnight, and even the scratchy music on the gramophone, turned up to full volume, couldn't hide the thunder he produced. They hoped to wake him up, but no luck. Between jokes and laughter, the men took turns throwing anything that was handy at him, until the poor man was completely covered. He still didn't wake up. "You guys, good guys," he'd kept saying throughout the night, between slaps on the back and illogical laughter. "No more tea blanc for the garlic snapper," Bob declared. "Can't hold his liquor." "What's his name again?" Ray asked. "Andres or something like that." "He's okay. Knows lots about making moonshine. Couldn't have done it without him," Bob said, and he raised his cup to take another drink. "Yeah, him and his buddy were real friendly when the booze came out." "His dogs must be worn out from dancing all night," said Frank. "His English ain't that good, but he tells good jokes," Lloyd said, chuckling. "I feel like a swim. What do you say, fellas?" said Ray. "Maybe he'll have suffocated by then and we can all sleep." Ray was still happy with energy to burn. His fingers tapped out rhythms to the music circling in his head. He hadn't felt this good in a long time and didn't want the party to end. Dan glanced nervously at the door of the hut. "No, we got to quiet down or we're going to be in trouble. Save it for another time. Scarface would be happy to raise hell. So let's just cool it and call it a night," he said. "Think we got carried away?" Lloyd asked. No, I don't think the Jerrys even noticed. They got more important problems. Besides, everyone's worn out and sleeping, or ready to," Ray answered. "Will someone turn that thing off?" Lloyd said. "I'm tired and the noise is irritating." Frank, his face fixed with a joker smile, quietly turned the gramophone off, and except for the snoring, the hut was finally quiet. They all drifted off, some on the floor, others had crawled into their beds. Lloyd slept soundly through what was left of the night. Just before dawn, nebulous shadows defining the interior of the hut crept through and settled on their sleeping faces. trailed over the wooden floor and up to shade shiny reflections in the small windows. Dawn dawdled, and the walls of the hut, saturated with delight, waited to see what a new day would bring. There was no violin music to welcome the morning, only a slithering shadow sniffing the air, searching and making its way through the mountain of intoxicated prisoners. The shadow grew more solid as it explored hidden corners of the drunken scene. So I still have a little time, I think.
Yes, it's good. It's 8 minutes so far. I think we still have time.
Okay, so I'll read another section. This is a little further on in the story, when they're on the death march. Numbed by cold, Lloyd couldn't bend or feel his fingers wrapped around the end of the pillowcase. His knuckles ached. Even the marrow in his bones seemed to have frozen, and the wind, whining as it rushed across the open landscape, echoed in his mind. He shifted from one hand to the other and swung the bag to the other side of his back. Lloyd tried to wiggle the fingers in his freed hand, while his feet kept the pace, moving forward. He'd managed to loop the end of the pillowcase around the handle of the violin case and carry the two together, but he wondered how long the bag would last in its torn and dirty state. I hope I can carry this. I wonder where the young violinist is now. Gotta keep moving, he thought. The violin was his future, a burden he would carry until he found his way home. His fist tightened. As they moved along the roadway, Lloyd noticed a Russian woman who had been let out of the work camp, bent over at the side of the road. Snow swirled around her like confused white flurries exhaled by a frigid wind. With her long hair and tattered rags circling around her, she resembled a piece of driftwood with rotting roots and broken limbs left to decay on a sandy beach. There didn't seem to be a guard within sight. I guess we're all in this together, he thought. Lloyd, with great reluctance, dropped his bag, sidestepped towards her, and offered his arm to her. She looked at him with dazed eyes and a slight smile of gratitude. Lloyd threw his arm under her arm, and with Bob's help, guided her back into the lineup. Dan grabbed the violin case and threw the pillowcase over his back. They continued their trek, the woman's feet dragging from a weightless body. Just as the snow blown in by the winds off the Baltic Sea started to blend and disappear into the darkening day, they arrived at Sept, a camp north of Stalag 2D. In obscure and dusky twilight, dirty gray buildings tied together with barbed wire fencing were blurred behind a lacy curtain of giant snowflakes gliding downwards from the sky. Snow stuck in crusts to the scarf he was wearing and to his eyelashes. Lloyd could barely believe that they had made it to another camp. On feet that felt like lifeless stumps, knees screaming at him, and dragging the Russian woman between himself and Bob, he followed the column through the open door to the interior of one of the huts. He was exhausted, breathing hard, and dazed. Bob and Lloyd carefully unwound the Russian woman's arms from around their necks, and like a deflated balloon, she teetered, folded down to her knees on the floor, and crumpled to the ground into a heap. From beneath the dirty woolen hat, her long stringy hair, white with frozen snow stuck to it, poked out and fell down her shoulders. Her skin appeared so thin and transparent, her skeleton seemed exposed. Pale and emaciated, she felt like a bag of dried bones. She looked up at Lloyd and Bob with glazed eyes and tried to speak, but she was unable to make a sound. She raised a withered hand in a gesture of thanks. Then she closed her eyes and her body relaxed into a slump. Dan and Bob took their coats off and wrapped them around her in an effort to warm her up. Ray folded his coat and placed it under her head. 2 Russian men from the work camp stood close to them, and one kneeled down beside her. In a whisper, he said, "Katerina," but there was no response. The man who addressed her looked up, first at Lloyd, then at Bob. A Russian POW stood quietly behind them and shook his head while muttering something in Russian. "How long has it been since she's eaten?" Dan asked. There was no response, and they realized the Russians couldn't understand English. "She's still breathing. Let's see if we can get her to eat or drink something. We might still be able to save her." "What have we got?" said Dan. "We could try some water first," Lloyd said, pulling out the canteen and shaking it to see if there was anything left in it. There was a little water sloshing around in it, and Lloyd unscrewed the top off of the canteen. Bob lifted her head and said, "Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me?" The woman opened her eyes and looked at Bob. Without uttering a sound, she swallowed thickly and retreated back behind closed eyes. They tried to dribble some water into her mouth, but it ran out the side of her face. Her tongue was swollen and parched dry, and her lips had a bluish tinge to them. "Try some chocolate. Do we have any left?" said Dan. They searched their pockets. "Keep trying with water," Lloyd said. "Maybe she just needs to get started. Try wetting something, a cloth maybe, and put it into her mouth. Here, I know." Lloyd took a clean undershirt out of his bag. "Here, use this." Lloyd soaked a corner of the shirt in water and placed it into her mouth. She didn't respond. They tried repeatedly to get her to swallow drops of water, then tried to coax her to eat a small piece of chocolate. They weren't successful with either one, and tried to break off some tiny crumbs of bread, but she just couldn't swallow. Her eyes fluttered, and the breath she took rattled. She seemed to sink as though drowning in quicksand, waiting for the release of death. She gasped for air, and for a few moments, and then with one final breath, slackened and died. The men sat back. "We tried, but she was too far gone," Dan said. Lloyd would never forget the look on the woman's face. There was not an ounce of flesh left on her, eaten by her own body in an effort to sustain it. The Russian kneeling beside her stood and with emaciated arms picked her up and carried her away. Lloyd had no idea where she was taken. He sat back and leaned against the wall behind him. He would never get used to mankind at its worst. He sighed, then whispered a prayer that she was in a better place now, one that was warm and full of love. Dad picked up the case with the violin in it and handed it to Lloyd. Too exhausted to say very much, Lloyd gave Dan a grateful pat on his arm and said, "Thanks. That's what friends are for," Dan murmured, and turned to find a place to rest.
Ah, good. Oh, thank you. Marvelous. I want to make sure we have 5 minutes for questions because how we got any questions? Anyone out in the audience or anyone in Zoom land?
Microphone. Come to the mic.
She could repeat the question.
How did you deal with the announcement of the march and the move?
Very emotionally. I had a hard time writing it without crying.
Yeah. So did they just perfunctory one day come along and say, "We're moving you all"?
Pretty much. They knew that the Soviets were coming from the east and that they were losing the war. And there was quite a few death marches. This one, Dad was at Stargard in Poland in Camp 2D, and they were marched north to Sept and then west to New Brandenburg. So, and in minus 20-degree weather. So it's pretty trying.
Okay, thanks.
The level of detail is so amazing to me. I mean, and just that you make it so alive. I feel like I'm there. And I mean, you know, just even little things in the lighter portion about Molly the mop, and how I think, David, you wrote something. You said you described not only what they did and said, but more importantly, how they felt. And I'm sort of interested that if you were relying a lot on letters and so forth, how you could put that together into a story that seems to go so smoothly and, you know, so compelling.
Well, I had more than the letters. I had a lot. My mother was a great source of information. She wasn't completely aware of everything that went on in the camps because she was at home in Canada. But yeah, my dad did tell us, especially me as a child, stories. I remember him telling me the story about the Russian lady that died in their arms of starvation. And from there, it was, along with a fair bit of research. I didn't really believe that it was a death march. I thought, Mom, you must be wrong. It can't be. Until I did a fair bit of research and I found the paperwork and so on. And indeed, he was part of that movement. So, yeah, I think probably the combination of childhood stories and the research and so on, and just putting yourself in there. Yeah.
I just find it so important, you know, to I don't want to tell, I don't know what the term is, not really, almost to personalize, but to make this history so real when you know, I think I have parent that was in the Second World War, but I mean, that's it. Then after me, there won't be. And so I think it's even more important that this somehow be like, but you've made it come alive. I think it's really even more important because there are generations to come that won't hear those stories directly.
Well, one of the things about history, like you can read books with all the dates and the battles and the generals and who did what to who and how many people died and so on. It can be very dry, especially to young people. And I wanted it to be a story that anybody at any age could read and enjoy and learn from. The Dieppe raid has been pretty much swept under the carpet until recent years because it was a failure. I did write something here. The war was at a low ebb in England in 1942, and Russia and the US insisted that a new front should be opened up. Winston Churchill, desperate for decisive action and under the direction of Lord Louis Mountbatten, mounted a raid against Germany and France. Dieppe was chosen as the site of the largest amphibious raid of the war, putting 8 divisions ashore across a broad shoreline. For nearly 3,000 brave Canadian soldiers, the war ended in the bloodbath of August the 19th, 1942. The raid was never going to succeed, yet it was launched and played through to the tragic conclusion. No battle in Canadian history has undergone such intense scrutiny. The planning was flawed, accompanied by very bad luck, intelligence failure, wireless malfunctions, and inept handling of communications contributed to the raid's failure. There are a total of 948 Commonwealth servicemen buried at the Dieppe Canadian War Cemetery. So you're right, it is an important, and I believe that it's only in recent years that it's being taught in the schools as part of the Second World War, that Canadian participation in the war. Okay.
Kind of in awe. One marvelous. I've always looked forward to hearing you read whenever you read on Electric Mermaid, because I'm so taken in by this whole story, and I love hearing you read it. Thank you. And if anyone else has any questions, or certainly would give you a hearty round of applause. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks.
Jennifer.
And now,
Right.
thank you.
Sorry.
And now we have Jennifer. When is going to read for us?
Evening. I have a new book out, Emergence. I did sort of a pre-launch in September. Karl will no doubt, he's already got my website up. You contact me through there if you don't have some other route, and I'd be happy to make an arrangement to get it to you. Derek may well have his already. So when he gets his voice back, he'll be able to vouch for it. I'm going to, like, I did this one about 4.5 years ago, but I thought I'd pull it out again. It's been 4.5 years. It's in the new book. I like the piece. It's also, given some of the things that are going on, I'm in this frame of mind sometimes, and you'll see what I mean. This is actually true story, although I had to imagine a little bit in order to flesh it out. But basically, the bones of it are actually true. It's called The Ballad of Margaret Murphy. The spring of another century, an ancient land cherished and cared for by First Nations, now flooded with waves of settlers from an ocean away and beyond, British, Irish, and more, all escaping and searching. Upper Canada in the newcomers' parlance, cradled by the Great Lakes, the budding towns, villages, and homesteads of the 1830s, ruled by a masculine colonialist elite in distant York, and caught up in the tides of history was an Irish girl named Margaret. Rugged Ireland, the Emerald Isle, home to music, poets, and pride, and even before the Great Famine, home to some lured by opportunity, said to beckon from Upper Canada, including young Margaret, a daughter of the prolific Murphy clan. Fate took her to the heart of the peninsula, an area replete with United Empire loyalists escaping the revolutionary states, Quakers, Baptists, and Methodists seeking freedom of worship, site of Norwichville hosting a tavern, and so many called the town Sodom. David Hagerman, born in Hilly, Dutchess County, New York, wife Frances and 3 daughters, 10, 5, and 1, established in Sodom now, aged 40, a carpenter, a big man in town. This David needed a servant, and Margaret Murphy needed a position. As summer 1837 faded into fall, Hagerman's walls hummed with the master's complaints. The family compact in York control everything. They're corrupt, belched a pile of land hereabouts for the Church of England. Floors, meanwhile, hummed with the relentless swish of Margaret's broom. Just back from Bedford's Inn, David trumpeted, William Lyon Mackenzie in York is the hope. Dr. Duncombe is our man here. We've got the Norwich Political Union now. I'm the quartermaster. We're not letting this stand. And on it went. What next? Wondered Miss Murphy, crouched low, cleaning out the fireplace. Fall wore into winter. December stole in. Rebel officers met at Hagerman's. Nervous whispers of but treason swept aside by glorious cries of taking up arms to help Mackenzie, Duncombe's brigade coming together. And on it went. Trouble, thought Margaret, cleaning up detritus from the great conclave. December 12th, Margaret, remember this day? Cross and Davis wouldn't give up their guns, but we got supplies from Wallace's store. Duncombe has a sword, pistols, and a dagger. Mackenzie's taken York. We are off to capture Brantford. That's all well and good, muttered Margaret, but I'm off to the laundry and linens. It's all fallen apart. We only got to Burford. Mackenzie failed. The Queen's militia is marching. Duncombe is a coward and vanished. Luke Peasley is hiding in a swamp. I can't stay. The loyalists are looking for me. Francis, take care of the girls. Margaret, you are in charge here now. Farewell. Rumors were flying through town. Loyalists said to be on the rampage, not just hunting men on the run, but scavenging for abandoned loot. Brave and hospitable, so ran the Murphy motto. The first part leapt to the fore, the second stepped into the shadows. Florists, fireplaces, and laundry gave way to fearless command, the day well and truly seized. If they're coming, I need to be ready. I think I know where he keeps a couple of convincing helpers. I'll be damned if that rabble gets anything here. Wild Irish shores birthed the Murphy name centuries ago. Sea warrior, the noble wellspring. A long way from the coast was Margaret, but the martial blood ran true. A long way from the ocean, and no trident here, but a land-bound kindred implement awaited her tenacious grasp. Up strode the mob, all bluster and swagger. Hagerman's gone to ground, easy pickings here. But in the doorway stood an Irish lass, hair a-billowing, savage look in her eye, 2 pistols stuck in her belt, angry pitchfork primed and ready. By God, you'll get nothing here. Sweet words and appeals to reason availed not but oaths and imprecations. Smirks soon soured to grim realization. Threats beget counter-threats, haughty barging in, quashed by tines to the throat or a gun barrel to the gut. You can all go to hell, you'll get nothing here. Defeated by implacable feminine will, would-be pillagers slunk off in search of easier plunder, pistols and pitchforks showing them the way, assorted curses ringing in the rears, young Margaret looming triumphant, spirit ablaze with history and the moment.
No.
The government did change, but not yet. Hagerman caught and tried for high treason, acquitted to the shock of many, returning home to an intact house, 30 years of a henceforth peaceful life, and a servant named Margaret, still cleaning, but never the same again.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. I'm off to the laundry and linens. And it turned out she did quite a bit.
How I tripped over that was family research, I think, in the first place, because my dad is from Norwich. And so, that area, like that's, very much, sort of my family's stomping grounds down there. And so I ran across this story and I thought, oh, this is too good. I got to do something with it.
Well, I'm glad you ran across it. Okay, now we're ready for Dan Biggs, sorry. Stan Biggs is in person, is he? Yes. And Dan Biggs is a featured reader tonight, so he will be speaking to us for 10 minutes. So we'll just get his ready. Oh, I did enjoy that poem.
Who's that?
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Somebody's got to work the
All right.
video.
The light isn't glaring off my head too much, is it? Okay, I'll just give a just sort of a brief summary before I start.
Okay.
Last time the protagonist, Maggie, had just arrived in the village and met her soon-to-be husband, who's much older than her, and she was sent there because she became pregnant out of wedlock. And yeah, so anyway, I'm starting off on chapter 7. I don't know how far I'm going to get, but we'll see how it goes. And she has been with her husband Henry for a while, about a month or so. She left her body to hover in the rafters, Henry's hairy, undulant back now at a distance, her clenched face reappearing under the buttress of his shoulder. Her head was turned, trying to hide in the straw pillow, his weight and strength pressed on her. Her hands gripped the bed sheet, the halantonic gust of his breath and the sticky ferment of him, rice wine and sawdust, saturated sockets behind crinkled eyes. She tried to think of something else, something pleasant, of Billy, to springtime with her sisters picking flowers on soft ground beside a still lake, to Sally the calico purring on her lap. The painful friction forced her thoughts to halt, colliding into stone, blotting her back into herself. Can he hurt the baby? Will the baby be disfigured? A hot surge and a groan. He rolled off, stood, pulled up his trousers, and left. A bellows empties. How many times is this now? Too many to think of. Every time a horror, nightmares. With a child growing inside her, she cannot have a child by him. When Billy's child comes, how will he treat the new life? After this, will she become pregnant? The indent of happiness covering her in sizes deeper. She would have no choice. She can't forget the first time he hit her. She had never been struck so hard before, had never tasted so much of her own blood. The sting lasting for hours. When she was a child and fell from a fence, or when mother slapped her for breaking the teapot, the pain like flecks of broken glass in the back of her nose and throat, only this time lasting longer. The urge then, like now, to get away, was crushed by the seal of knowing there was no escape. Here on the edge of the world, where was she to go? An image of Henry storming down the wharf towards her as she waited to board the ship filled her with a sensation of falling into a black, bottomless pit. She has no money. Everybody knows Henry. Most owe him. If she wasn't carrying Billy's child, she would run off into the forest and let the moss and roots consume her, or tie an anchor to her ankle and jump from the wharf and let the fish and crabs consume her. Will he beat the child? Maybe if he beats her, he will leave the child alone. She rolled onto her side, didn't cry this time. Her brain boiled with rage and disgust at him in a cold slurry. He was taking her spirit, her dreams of Paris, leaving her in a sinking void. She wanted to lash out, to blind him, to feel his eyeballs pop under the press of her fingernails. In the morning, as all mornings, Henry sat at the table. With her back turned, she felt his frown as when she'd made coffee in an iron kettle. With no words and a belly full of oatmeal, he left for his sawmill, or wherever he went. She cleaned and took up the book her neighbor Ellen, the school teacher, gave her, The Secret Garden. Maggie enjoyed reading, but had been unable to bring a book from home with her. And there was no books in Henry's house. The Secret Garden was a children's book. She would have preferred something more adult, but this was all there was. I think you'll like it, Ellen told her. It's a little much for the younger children. Despite its adolescence composition, she finds the novel interesting, with a plot somewhat similar to her own plight. It's about a girl named Mary living in India who loses her parents to a cholera epidemic, who is sent to England by a priest to live with her father's sister, who, unknown to Mary and the priest, has passed on. Mary must live with her uncle, who was a hunchback. She rarely leaves the house as the days blended with days and gave up their brevity to the static evenings and nights in Henry's presence. Their conversations were unavoidably awkward. He showed no interest in her or her past, and would talk of his travels and deeds through the North Coast, a land of rock, water, and trees, he called it. The work he did, logging, mining, tried fishing once, and how he came into the possession of the sawmill from an old logger who taught him the ways of timber cruising, setting wire rope, and steam engines, and left it to him on the promise he'd be given a proper burial. After finding the old fellow a nice spot overlooking an inlet, he moved the sawmill south to where the government was building a proper town next to a native village. He was there for a year and hooked up with a native girl. They were happy until she died of consumption, as did most of the village. The village was abandoned and the town never finished. He heard about the mining starting up over here and told the mill across the street. 6 years passed and the town is growing. A town, according to him, he built. He often left after dinner to play cards and came back late, staggering drunk, which she didn't mind. he would stay out of her bed. Every second or third day, the Japanese boy would bring fresh fish, salmon, halibut, or rock cod. He looked young. She soon learned he was older than her, 24, and his name was Hideki. His deliveries were the highlight of her day. He spoke English well for a foreigner. He was friendly and helpful. She would see him coming up the boardwalk and open the door with him. He showed her how to skin fish and carried the firewood. He was a mystery. He was a young man who was smart and who spoke English, doing hair. Working as a fishmonger, to her his look was exotic. She had never been in the company of an Asian person. She had only seen them at a distance and in the pictures in the library. Asian people kept to themselves. They lived in their own fascinating world, a world pulling on her curiosity. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with teardrop-shaped pearl black eyes and thick black hair. In his presence, she felt childish, bit on her smile while her heart raced. Where did you learn English so well? Back home in Japan? Did you go to university? He hesitated before answering. Yes. What did you study? She asked, moving closer. He avoided eye contact and tried to keep his distance, but failed as she moved closer. My father was teacher. He not liked. Family had to leave Japan. I do not finish. Leave? Why did your family have to leave? We bukarum. What's bukarum? Hard to tell someone who not from Japan. We not like, discriminated. Where is your family now? He started to pack up his knives and wipe the table. Fish done, ma'am. I must go. I'll see you in a few days, Maggie asked. Hideki made a quick bow and hurried out. On Sunday, she would attend Sunday school Ellen taught to the 8 children who would attend. Maggie found the classes were more often about reading than religion. Each child would attempt to read parts of the book, God is Love, out loud to the class and then asked to explain what she had read. Ellen only had one copy of the large book. It had many colored pictures and stories written for children and would be passed around to each pupil. Ellen told Maggie not to talk about how she was teaching the class. Most of the children only attended Sunday school, and Ellen said learning to read was more important than her reading the stories out loud or reciting dogma, as she put it. In the morning after Henry left, she sat at the pane window watching the village with its people moving about, boats in the harbor, and asked herself, is this what life is? Is this what I have to look forward to? How will I ever be able to get away from here? She sensed the gradual swelling of her stomach. She had been feeling it for a while. This morning the cramping was worse. She wasn't showing, but would soon. They will think you are his, she said to her belly. My life is yours. Did other women feel this way when they went from child to mother? Was there anything in between? Was there any freedom to life of your own? Or were you forever tied to others, alive and yet to be born? Mother should be here to guide me. Father and brother should be here to protect me. She clung to the youthful expectations of love and travel, to marvel at things, a dream growing fuzzy with every sunset. A child had to be would add to Henry's prestige. It was hers and Henry's secret. How did it make him look in the eyes of those he held power over if the truth came out? The secret would be safe with him, unless the smart ones did the math. But they think we were married before she arrived. And if he got drunk and blabbed his mouth, the shame would be his. The truth would be out. Would pity be hers? Pity from the villagers? Perhaps she could find a way through them. As Maggie waited for the kettle to get warm, the water hot for her bath, she continued to read The Secret Garden. Mary was just taking her cousin, Colin, outside in his wheelchair. The two were on their way to investigate. She was taken out of the story by sudden shouts from outside. Through the pane window, she saw Ellen scolding one of her sons. She couldn't make out what was being said, and her thoughts gapped to a future as a mother. She moved her hand over her stomach. How will I care for you? Will you be good? She remembers being young and how her and her sisters, often in trouble and being scolded for it. At times their mother would go crazy with anger at them. Children under scorn seemed to be a constant. Unhappy adults also a constant. If children made them happy, why did they have children? Was it a rush? Was it the rush of youthful hormones fooling them into the responsibility of parenthood? She recalled a young woman named Elizabeth, who she did not know, having seen her only a few occasions in town. Her knowledge was derived from the many rumors floating around town like papas on the wind in springtime. Elizabeth was much younger than her husband, a Mr. Angles, who owned several furniture stores in the city. The most persistent and intriguing of the rumors was Mr. Angles spoiled his young wife. Elizabeth didn't work, didn't cook or clean. She stayed in the house or sat on the porch waiting for husband.
Okay, I think we've done 10.
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much. It's so much this time. You took us into the internal life of these characters. Thank you. Thank you very much. And took us to the edge of the world. And now we have David Kipling. Yes, David was ready.
Yes, yes, smooth transition. If the computer we use has no camera, so I've got a little clip-on camera, and no matter what I do, it doesn't point right. So there we go. This is something I wrote this partly. I was remembering years and years ago, my father had a neighbor who died, and this is what I did with it. Okay, are we live? Good. Rachel drew a finger along the row of empty clothes hangers, which clattered together like an abacus in the dark wardrobe. Rachel and Tarek had volunteered to help clear out old Mr. Dickens's house next door. The life was gone from it. The little bungalow barely breathed. Even in daylight, the small back garden seemed faded, as though in a photograph from long ago. Last week, there had been no answer to the mailman's knock, 2 days in a row. Mr. Dickens, living alone at 90, was known to be frail, and so a policewoman had forced the front door. Mr. Dickens was sitting quite dead by the shoe rack in the small hallway, a brush by his old hand beside an overturned tin of shoe polish. His adult daughter, herself retired and living far away, had been driven to the house to collect personal papers and valuables. She had said little while hurrying to and from her taxi. Rachel had spoken over the fence to tell the woman how she and Tarek had enjoyed Mr. Dickens being a neighbour, despite not being sure of his first name. James, his name was, James. You must forgive me, we were estranged, hadn't seen much of each other. Now Tarek, that sounds exotic. Is it a foreign name? Tarek, how exciting. The woman had authorised a lawyer to handle the sale of the bungalow and for the Salvation Army to clear its contents, and without further ado, she had been driven back to London the same day. Rachel and Tarek attended the simple funeral at the village's Baptist church. Today, they'd come over to help because they'd been fond of their elderly neighbour, helping occasionally when Mr. Dickens's garbage can, or the shopping. Rachel had mowed his lawn a few times, back when Mr. Dickens had admitted defeat, and before he had hired a landscaping outfit. Mr. Dickens had always seemed ageless to them, as though living in another time. Tarek, could you do his underwear drawers and all that dresser stuff for throwing out? The Sally Ann only wants shirts and jackets and trousers, so I'll tackle the wardrobe. The wardrobe, or perhaps it was the floor itself, was out of kilter, and when Rachel tugged open the heavy mirrored door, the coat hangers inside swung and clicked in sympathy. Rachel lifted each sad garment from its hanger to build soft heaps on the single bed. She leaned forward and breathed the musk of mothballs and cedar and old wool. On the wardrobe's scratched metal rail hung a score of hangers. The wire ones still wore thin paper covers from a long ago dry cleaning. A few had sagged out of shape over the years. Some had left creases in the shoulders of the old man's shirts. The glossy plastic hangers rattled and were quick to shed their burdens. 2 fine Viella shirts, a beautiful cotton wool mix, both in grey, hung on wooden hangers. Viella, here in the home of an impecunious pensioner. The wooden hangers knocked together quietly. They were kinder to the touch and to the fabric. Rachel stroked these stout hangers, relishing their solidity, and the way their beechwood arms sloped slightly downwards and forward to follow an ideal draped shoulder line. She reached into the dead air of the wardrobe and hooked one of these wooden hangers. She silently asked the house's permission to hold on to this remembrance of the old man. After all, she was his neighbour. The hanger's edges were rounded to avoid creasing. Its broad wooden arms, in her wandering imagination, resembled a yoke that could balance the weight of buckets across the shoulders of some stoical gardener. The maker's emblem and name had been stamped firmly into the wood and were marked out with what might have been gold leaf, though Rachel could no longer decipher the lettering. She hefted the weight of it. The trouser rod, spanning the bottom, rolled smoothly and freely. This was no cheap throwaway. Something about the fine-grained hardwood and its elegant shape conjured up the image of a gentleman's outfitter or bespoke tailoring establishment. Old Mr. Dickens? She wondered. Now she saw two finely knit woolen sweaters lying neatly on the top shelf, though the sheet of tissue paper protecting them had fallen free, and a little of the home's dust had settled on the soft V-necks. But who on earth nowadays stores their woolens flat, thought Rachel. She peered again around the dusty bedroom for clues. The elegant hangers stood out incongruously among the modest, even reduced surroundings. Were they an out-of-place luxury here? Who had similar companions, cufflinks perhaps, or silver-backed hairbrushes, or even bow ties, had such successively fallen by the wayside as the man at his home slowly diminished into old age? Rachel wanted to believe that Mr. Dickens and this fine coat hanger had once been well matched. The heavy tweed overcoat she had lifted from it now lay on top of a mound of clothes. The big coat must have seen its owner shrink and perhaps ceased to dress formally in recent years. Its dark blue satin lining was fraying at the hems, but must have done elegant service in the past. She leaned her head into the wardrobe again. A stout business envelope had slipped down behind the wardrobe's top shelf. Rachel tugged it and drew out a certificate headed Hong Kong Harbour Authority, acknowledging 25 years of satisfactory service and bearing a stamped signature that mimicked handwriting. A handwritten scribble added, "All the best from Michael T." She shook her head and took a final tiptoe peek into the back of the wardrobe and saw forlorn on the shelf a single padded hanger in lilac-coloured satin with a blue silk bow and a chromium skirt bar with two mother-of-pearl clips. Rachel reached towards it and then slowly withdrew her hand. She would probably never know. The end. Was that fine?
Jim, thank you. I love that about the hanger and the abacus. I just love that. Okay, next. Vicki. Oh, I'm always love to hear Vicki. She's going to read Drybrough. She's going to read in person from Electric Mermaid.
Hard to come to the present when these wonderful readers have been sort of taking me away. Oh my goodness. Wow. This is an old one that I have read before, but changed a little bit. It takes place in the summer of 1969. Four university girls are working at a lodge for the summer, and they are in a bunkhouse with the owner's younger daughter, who is a lot younger than them, and quite strange. Anyway, it's called Summer Job, 1969. Charlotte cursed under her breath as she heard the hollow thud of cowboy boots on the veranda of cabin 5. She had wanted to avoid any contact with this guy. "Hi there." He paused in the open doorway before sauntering over to the bed and sitting down on the end of it. His legs boxed her in. "Why don't you take a little break and sit down?" He patted the bed beside him. There was an insect-like intensity about his eyes as he watched her, trapped between the bed and the wall. She finished folding the bedspread over the pillow and smiled brightly. "Oh, I'm afraid I'm much too busy to sit and talk today." She tried to brush past him, but he grabbed her wrist and pulled her down hard. Nonsense. He fumbled in his shirt pocket with his other hand and produced a $10 bill, which he held up. I was told the chambermaids here are very friendly. The purple bill fell to the bed as he moved his hand to her knee and began to push the skirt of her uniform up her thigh. His face, with its hard, calculating eyes, came close to hers, and she could smell the breakfast coffee on his breath. He let go of her wrist to clamp his hand on her right breast, and Charlotte brought her hands together. No! With more strength than she knew she had, she pushed him away, launched herself off the bed, and ran to the door, banging it behind her as she raced across the veranda, down the steps, and out to the pine-needled path. She hurried down the path, glad that she had gotten away, but she might not be so lucky next time. Between lunch and dinner, the girls had a few hours to themselves. Today, the four of them were seated in one of the lodge's aluminum boats, heading out to join the other small boats near the lighthouse. Val and Charlotte, being petite, had squeezed together in the stern, while Sandy, with her long legs, sat in the bow. Jill, the most experienced sailor of the four, was rowing. Her large frame filled the middle seat, and her feet, clad in bright pink flip-flops, were planted firmly between Val's and Charlotte's. "What happened to your arm?" asked Sandy. Jill stopped rowing and showed them the angry red scratch. "Tinker Bell." "I hate that cat," said Sandy. "They should give us danger pay if we have to clear him out of the dining room," said Val. "I know I could use the money." Jill took up the oars again and started to row. "I don't know about you," said Charlotte slowly, "but the guy in cabin 5 is dying to give me money." "What do you mean?" asked Jill. So Charlotte told them about the male guest. "He wanted to have sex with you in his cabin in the middle of the morning?" asked Sandy. "Not sex, you dummy. He probably just wanted her to go down on him," said Val. "Did you do it?" "No." "What's going down?" asked Sandy. Val burst out laughing. "You don't know what going down means?" "No." "How come you know so much about it?" asked Jill. "I've got 2 older brothers." "So?" Jill pushed her sunglasses up higher on her nose. "I've got an older brother too, but we don't talk about sex." "Yeah, well, they do, and sometimes I listen in." "Well, I don't know what you're talking about," said Sandy. "Look." Jill stopped rowing, peered over her sunglasses at Sandy. "It's like having sex, only you use your mouth. You can't get pregnant that way." Understanding swept over Sandy then, and she clamped her hands over her face. "Ooh, that's so disgusting." Charlotte and Val looked away as Jill's mouth became a hard line and she began rowing fiercely. "You know what it is? It's sexual harassment. You have to report him." "Who do I report him to?" "The cops," said Sandy. "No," yelled Charlotte and Val together. "Then you have to tell Mrs. B," said Jill. "I can't do that," said Charlotte. "He would deny it and I would get fired. It's way too late to find another summer job now." "Why is he picking on you like that?" asked Sandy. "Nobody's asked me to, do that." "Would you do it?" asked Val. "No." Sandy gasped and looked down. "Would you?" demanded Jill. "No, I'm not going to suck some guy's dick to make a few lousy dollars." "You guys." Sandy covered her ears with her hands. "Oh, but wait." Val waved her hands with excitement. "Think about it. You'd only have to do it 5 times and you'd have $50. That's like a week's pay." "You're disgusting." Jill started pulling hard on the oars and the boat lurched forward. "But I don't understand why he approached me," said Charlotte. "Do I look like a whore? Do I have a sign on my forehead or something?" "You're overreacting," said Val. "What did he say?" "He said, 'I hear the chambermaids here are very friendly.'" "Well, you're the only chambermaid." It was 2 oar strokes before Jill stopped rowing and announced, "No, she isn't. Portia does that job on Charlotte's day off." They looked at each other with shocked faces and Sandy gasped. "She's been giving blowjobs to guys in their rooms," whispered Val. "She just turned 13, said Jill. "Where did she learn to do things like that?" And everybody thinks it's me, whispered Charlotte. They stopped talking, and the only sounds were the oars as they dipped and swung, and the wet sucking of the sea against the bow. Thank you.
Muted. I love that line with more strength than she knew she had. But I thought, good. I thought, there goes the whole thing about romanticizing summer jobs. Okay. Thank you very much. And next, we have September. September Ember. Hi, on Zoom land.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, there's my cat. Hi, I've been here once before. I never actually introduced myself. I'm September. I live in Port Alberni. I did write a book, Where the Four Winds Dwell, that I sell on Etsy, just in case. I prepared a couple poems that I'm going to read tonight. The vibe of what everyone's been reading has made me change the first poem that I'm going to read. So instead, I'm going to do This Place I Have Known, So My Family Has Grown. I must now go from here, having spent long days in short, having seen what I needed, doing that which led me. For I now know the ways, learned days, seen, felt, heard, met, spoke, between all that can be such. Like you, brothers and sisters, you I know, from then so to evermore. My siblings, my family of those lands, women and men of the Philippines, of Africa, of Thailand, of India, and you of Russia, Europe, Lebanon, hailing from Portugal, from China and Japan. And yes, you from my homeland, gathering from different regions, children of Canada, seekers, refugees, voyagers, all of you are now from me and I from you. I'm here for you and always. I have viewed wickedness, spoken with power, met courage, built confidence, much as built strength, submitting myself to another's whim and they to mine in kind, being kicked, beaten, spat upon, being loved, nourished, accepted. I, through wealth and poverty, myself giving change, myself eating the crust, I have found and content accompanied. Therefore I must go on, like the breeze which I am. And you all parts of me now, vital dust and particles, remembered forever in my eyes, like the rain that falls and seeps through skin. So blessed am I, so humbled for it. Keepers of house, maintainers, exchangers, you are more than you know, the light of the day in a land which bears you growth. I bear growth for you. I seek and give as I can. You others with many titles, many duties, keep heads raised and understand you are the world. See that the wind has passed over you knowing, learning and taking and giving in turn. A functioning living cell are we, O dreamers of many dreams. Maganda, everyone, thank you, for now I may go. Light is in my heart and you are the kindle. I wrote that when I left a housekeeping job. And then I've got one that I wrote last year. It's called First Time Seeing Grass. I woke up with this in my head this morning. Maybe I was born magic. Maybe they're not like me. Maybe I'll live while I live, words and dirt and tragedy. They don't mean a thing. They don't get it. I've been living my life like I'll regret it. Like form and force, like love and limes. Meet me in the field. I walk out like I've been doing time. It doesn't mean a thing. They just don't get it. I've been looking like I don't sweat it. I know rhyme and reason, phases of the moon. I see how it ends, but I'm alive and I'm immune. 'Cause they don't know a thing. I just don't get it. It feels like I'll forget it. Don't know what that's about. And then one that I wrote this month. It's called Be Like Honey. With hands stained by beats, the many aspects of the day leave a trace on me. Moving through moments, my vibration changes from thought to feeling. It's written on my face, but only I can see. What I thought was once above me shows itself. It's always been the roots, the herbs, the dirt. God comes down like a pillar, planting me in the present. Time escapes me because I now know it's only now. And God says, this is good, even when I'm dying. I see that it's truth. I trust. Breaking the sugar coating like a dessert from my chest, I watch it crumble. I thought it was stronger. Now I'm exposed and I react with anger. How do you go on living when there are no walls keeping you safe? Naked to the elements, I've forgotten how to speak. I look back in reverie, but I recall that time's not real, and again, there's only now. And it seems that without concrete around my chest, I feel stronger. This time it's honey and it's pouring over me. It makes it harder to move, but it's warm and flowing. I allow it to guide me, releasing my tendency to control. I see that it knows best, and my body seems to know what to do. I ease in. I'm ready, even though it wouldn't matter nonetheless. And that's actually all I have. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I love that. Looking like I've been doing time.
Yeah.
Wonderful line. I love
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. And now we're going back to the Electric Mermaid live. Is Robbie there?
Robbie Van, yes.
Oh, Robbie Van. Oh, super. Okay, just setting up.
Good evening and welcome to Cha-Cha-Cha-Cha's Landing. This evening, today I got my hair cut last week and I look like Velma from Scooby-Doo. So I wrote this a little while back. This is called The Vampire's Kiss. The urges of the body can be resisted, but the urges of the heart have no antidote. The howl of the hunt, the scream, then it's still, the scent of the chase, the rapturous thrill, a sigh of contentment when the blood's all been drained, with the morning sun, he's human again. Okay, who'd I kill? Oh, a buck, good. You ever get one of those days that start out like this? No phone, no clothes, no shoes? I better get going. Most folks are up and about. I hope I didn't leave them at the office. Oh, that's right. I left them behind Vampires. It's a good thing I know all the back ways through the area. Wow. Vampira last night was so hot. When we were dancing, oh my God, how could she dance? She had me captivated until the change started happening and I ran out the back. At Vampira's red lights, red upholstery, and Vampira herself in black and scarlet satin. She was fascinating. Is it bestiality if you have violent sex with a werewolf? Vampira smiles to herself in the mirror. In the old days with the silver backing, I couldn't see myself and had to have a maid. Today's mirror made with aluminum backing. Much better. Now that's progress. I look ravishing. Immortality lets me keep my perfect skin. Not a bad night, Wolfie. You made for an interesting hunt. A challenge for once. I loved it. I got a feeling we'll be seeing each other soon. Real soon. Oh, well, it's off to my coffin for some shut-eye. I sleep like the undead for 8 to 10 hours. Shopping, dinner, then off to the club for the night. A by-the-book lawyer during the day and a feral werewolf at night. Like salt and sweet. He'd be great. It's a kind of freaky when his eyes turned yellow. Something to dream about. Good morning, my coffin awaits me. So see you all later. The house is deadly quiet. Then comes a knocking at the door. Vampira wakes from slumber. She could use a few hours more. Don't wake me early. Don't ring the bell. Don't disturb my rest. She grabs her roll, yells through the door. I'm not even dressed. Do you have any more time for one more?
Yeah, we're at 3 minutes, so you have time for 2 minutes.
Well, there we go. Perfect. When I was living in Parksville and we had the full moon, and then it came across and eclipsed the sun. It was about 6 or 7 years ago. And the night before, I was restless and I got up about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and wrote a piece of poetry. And that day, when the sun was at its darkest, let's say, when the moon came across, it was really silent. It was a weird, eerie feeling, and all the birds had hushed. So I was there in a white robe and a white laurel around my head and a smudge, and I walked from the shore all the way to where the ocean was lapping at the sand, and I said these words: "Strange incantations heard in a dream. Weird invocations, what could they mean? Earth spirit guides me and moves in my soul. Moon goddess, hold me here in your glow. The powers line up before the sun. Moonlight imposes, affects everyone. My feet feel a pulse as I bring fire to the sea. The wind in my face as my spirit soars free. Umbra, sensorem rem, quantum uno, quantum totalis. I praise at the altar with for Ra, the heat and the light of our sun. I kneel in the soil of creation as luna's light bathes everyone. I kiss the waters of life by the sea, the blessings of Mother Earth, and I look to the stars and dream of a life in a weave of creation and birth. Oh, holy, 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 blessed are we the beings brought here in this time and space with the gift of truly seeing. For the song of bird and branch and breeze is our nature's true desire. So I look to the stars and dream of my life, and my journey is now inspired." Thank you.
There, David, you had a few comments, did you?
Oh, if I do, it's an uncommonly cheerful vibe about vampires. I love that line. Not a bad night, Wolfie. It's such a treat to hear happy vampire stories.
All right. Now, is there anyone who hasn't read, who wishes to read?
Wonder if Derek's watching this.
Oh, I hope Derek's not watching this. All right. Because it looks like we have gone through the entire list, which Karl has given me. Karl, speak up. Have I gone through the list?
Yes, you have.
All right. And do you want to announce our next month?
Yeah, next month is Donna Kane from Rolla, BC, which is up in the northern, near Dawson Creek.
Oh, well, that sounds exciting. All right. Well, then, I look forward to seeing everybody and hearing everyone next month. This has been very exciting. Nothing's made me appreciate Derek more.
We must all send our healing thoughts out to Derek's throat.
Send your healing
Get
thoughts
well,
to
Derek.
Derek. Get well, please.
Well, I'd like to thank Char for being the
yes.
producer.
Yes, thank you very much, Char.
And I'd like to thank Kathleen and David for stepping up to be MC and timers. So thank you guys. I think you can time from now on. I'll just sit back and you guys can be the timers. You guys
Oh, no, that's a
job.
terrible job. That's not a job for me. Oh, my Lord, no.
No, you did a great job.
I'd like to thank everybody who read tonight. It's been really marvelous to hear everybody. I tell you, Electric Mermaid is the highlight of my month. It's so great. Thank you very much. And thank you to Karl. Where would we be without Karl? Don't forget to thank Karl.
Yeah, hopefully we can get an anthology of Electric Mermaid stuff together sometime.
Oh, yeah, we need to do that.
I don't know who's gonna
be back.
publicize it, but we'll figure it out.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And thank you, Karen, for being our feature reader.
Oh, yes, yes, wonderful. Yes, thank you very much.
David and Kathleen, you're awesome.
No, we're not.
No.
No, you are. You've done my job. You've now done Derek's job. I don't know. We kind of produce it from Zoomland, so Char's free. She can still do her job.
Come back again, everyone.
Yeah, it's come back, everyone. Especially Derek, come back.
Yes, hopefully that he'll be back. And hopefully we'll see September again. And hopefully
yes.
Yes, so hope to see you all next month.
All right.
And hope to see some of you guys in person someday. That means you, Jennifer.
Night.
All right,
Char.
I'm gonna
Goodbye, Char.
goodbye, Char. Thank you so much. Oh,
You hate leaving.
yeah, I know I hate leaving Electric Mermaid, but it can't be helped. Oh, leave meeting. I'm going.